there is income that is being generated off of that property. And that income would transfer to the Office of Foreign Affairs. Now this one is a very, very valuable piece of property. And this property fronts Ala Moana Boulevard. People refer to it as the APIS building because once upon a time, this is where the Air Force had their offices. Currently, this building here on the corner houses the Department of Public Safety and the Department of Health. It's right across the street from the Fisherman's Wharf restaurant. And one of the reasons why this particular property is very, very valuable, you'll see that the state, in their offer to OHA, is willing to go to a 400-foot height limit. Now normally, height limits for that property would be about 250 feet, so the governor adding another 150 feet makes this particular property even that much more valuable. So you'll see right now it's valued at roughly $17 million. The MUZ is multi-use, so it could be for an office tower if you wanted to do that. It could not be obviously for a condominium because you couldn't have residential development. Now this property has a more reasonable lease on it in terms of the length of time. This lease is with the state of Hawaii, which means that they probably aren't paying anything. The state isn't paying itself anything for it. So there's not a lot of money that would transfer over to the Office of Foreign Affairs. The good news is that the lease only runs until 2018. So until that time, public safety and health would be probably still occupying the building unless the governor were to say, well, we're going to move them out earlier and then the property becomes available. But this one is a really important piece of property. This is an interior parcel on the map that you looked at, and this is referred to as the piano lot. It's a flat piece of property. There's been some talk about building a cultural center here on this particular property. Right now it is vacant, and they use it as a parking lot. The state does. For new vehicles and people working downtown, they park over here. And that's just a temporary use. The value, $30 million. Multi-use zone, density, or the height limit 200 feet. So the next one is actually, it used to be connected. Those two parcels used to be connected. And then it was separated by a road that runs right in between. So this property here is valued at roughly $18 million, 2.5 acres, and it is multi-use. Just so we're all up on the gossip, there's been a lot of talk over the past several years that this would be the area around here where the Obama Presidential Library situated. Now, of course, who knows what Obama would agree to. Normally, the libraries are in the state that the president is from, but not always, because Bill Clinton's library is actually in Little Rock, or New York, I'm sorry. So it's possible that President Obama could agree to that, but that's gossip. Now, this is on the ever side of the waterfront park area. And this right now is a parking lot next to the Johnny Burns School of Medicine. It is a beautiful, flat piece of property, valued at $24.8 million, roughly 5 acres, multi-use, and you'll see that the height limit is roughly 100 feet, which means that that's about 10 stories high. If you were to build a building there, you could go up 10 stories. Right next to that, on the other side of this piece of property, is Pier 1 and 2, and it's part of the container yard that is there. And the very last, this is the second to the last piece of property. This is right on the corner of Point Panning. And this building, this parcel, houses a state government building right now. And it's called Oceanographic Center or something like that. And that's right on the corner. And it's zoned waterfront commercial and roughly 65 feet high. This is a property that some people will have some concern about, and those concerns have to do with access to the ocean, because that's where the surfers gain access right there, where Ernie's pointing out. That's how they get down to the water. So certainly OHA would not try to restrict them from doing that. And the last piece of property, this is again on the other side of the waterfront park. This warehouse currently houses the homeless shelter called Next Step Shelter. This property is actually very, very familiar to the Office of Foreign Affairs, because that's the piece of property at one time OHA was seriously looking at to build its offices. And it's, again, right on the water. That grid that you see running up and down is a canal that runs between the park and that particular piece of property. You'll see that even though there is no lease here, it is being used currently as a homeless shelter. And even though it has a 45-foot height limit, which means that that's roughly 4 stories, it is a beautiful piece of property. One of the things that OHA was considering is that that piece of property just happens to be in what's referred to as the tsunami inundation zone, so you have to build it up a little bit to get past that. So those are the 10 pieces of property that make up the proposal. And there it is again, the total value, $198 million. That's what's on the table today. Bill also talked about the whole due diligence process. And we'll take questions after we're powered. Okay, so the next steps. We're going to come out, as I said, this is round 1, where we will hopefully educate the community as to what the settlement includes and what it does not, what claims are being settled and what claims are not being settled. We do plan to come out again with the second round of meetings to share with you what people have said about the proposal. And we need to do this fairly quickly, because when the legislature convenes in January, they're going to want to take this issue up. Now, one of the other very important next steps has to do with due diligence. And when we talk about that, we are really looking at, are there conditions on the property, such as the title, such as contamination, that would make it impossible for OHA to accept those properties. Now, just because a particular piece of property may be contaminated does not necessarily rule it out as a possible conveyance, because there are ways of dealing with contamination. So that we're clear, it has really to do with the duty of care. But obviously, OHA is going to be very, very careful about the due diligence process to make sure that these properties meet that duty of care before they agree to the conveyance. And that's going to happen sometime in December and in January. That's when the due diligence will actually occur. And hopefully, if the community is comfortable with what's happening, if the members of the legislature are comfortable with what's happening, then what will ultimately happen is that a bill will be passed that will actually codify the conveyance of this property, and at the same time, there will eventually be some kind of a settlement document that is executed between OHA and the state of Hawaii. But I assure you that that hasn't been done yet, but it will eventually be done once there is meeting of the minds. Ernie, anything else we have here? Okay, I think that's plenty for a Friday evening, and I know that you all have many questions. Let me let you know that the group that's here, including Bill, are eminently qualified to respond to a multitude of questions, and I know that people on Maui are not shy. I've been here before. I know you're not shy, so please feel free. The microphone is right there. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
I didn't catch the lease dates from property C on, C through L. Can you give us the lease dates?
Sure. We are probably better off giving you a handout. Is it on the handout?
No. That's why I asked, because it's not on the handout.
Okay.
From C on.
We can go quickly back through it, and we'll give you the lease date. So there's one.
C.
All right, there. You'll see right after the APIS building, which is parcel F. I'm sorry, not F. E. Right there. The lease runs until 2018. The Honolulu Maritime Center, which is parcel B, is 2021.
But it doesn't show on C. Can you show me on C?
C is the Keiki Fishing Conservancy, and that's 2074.
Okay, and
Now, between C and D, the John Dominus building is a small block that makes up a radio tower. And that radio tower, the lease on that is until 2035.
wait. The radio tower on D.
It's between C and D.
Oh,
And D, the John Dominus site, 2042. And on the very corner, the Pacific Biosciences Research Center, 2030. And that's a state lease. Now, on the other side of the park, you see parcel J is the parking lot next to the Johnny Burns School of Medicine. And that, I don't have the lease on that. We can get that, and parcel L. Now, I want to make sure we're real clear here. There are, according to the Attorney General, there are 2 parcels of the 10 that we're looking at that are actually ceded lands. And those 2 parcels are parcel K and parcel L. And the reason why we want to know what is ceded is if there was an income being generated off of those ceded lands, we might argue, well, gee, we already own 20% of those properties, therefore, we want it to be valued differently. Now, there is no income right now that is being generated off of those properties. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, the second question is, can the height restrictions on these properties change?
Well, you'll see that on the APIS building, which is the property right there, the current height restriction is 250 feet. The governor and the attorney general are, as part of this deal, if you will, are saying that it can go up to 400